The United States federal government may be looking to buy Bitcoin. How likely is that to happen? What does that mean for the United States, its allies, its enemies, and the global economy? Let's break it down. The simple fact that you clicked on this video probably means that you've heard of Bitcoin. If not, in short, it's the largest cryptocurrency by market cap, with a total market cap at the time of writing this of roughly $2 trillion. To put that in perspective, in terms of all assets by market cap, it currently ranks 7th, behind only Alphabet, Amazon, Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple, and gold, with gold far above the rest at a staggering $17 trillion. And the second largest cryptocurrency by market cap, Ethereum, coming in at 26th, with a total market cap of around $400 billion. Back in July of 2024, Donald Trump attended and spoke at the Bitcoin 2024 event in Nashville, Tennessee. During his speech, Trump announced his intention to make the United States the
crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world, and we'll get it done.
In addition, he mentioned creating a strategic national Bitcoin stockpile and expressed that America should be the place where Bitcoin is mined, minted, and made. This is in sharp contrast to the policy of most countries in the world, with only a handful claiming to own any Bitcoin at all, and most of their holdings coming from confiscations. El Salvador and Bhutan are, at the time of writing, the only countries actively mining Bitcoin. Despite this drastic change in rhetoric, the United States currently holds more Bitcoin than any other country in the world, with a purported 207,189 Bitcoin in its bags, thanks to a few seizures over the past several years. So you may be asking yourself, why is Trump touting a plan to buy more? Well, Trump isn't the only government official to express this interest. Republican Senator Cynthia Lummis, who also spoke at the Bitcoin 2024 event, has introduced Senate Bill 4912, the Boosting Innovation, Technology, and Competitiveness Through Optimized Investment Nationwide Act of 2024, aka the Bitcoin Act of 2024, which also calls for the United States to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. As of writing, this bill has been read twice in the Senate and has been referred to the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. It wasn't so long ago that the United States government ridiculed and criticized Bitcoin as not having intrinsic value and only useful for terrorist organizations, but it now may begin to recognize the value proposition of this digital asset. Bitcoin has a unique pitch for what makes it valuable. For starters, it is coded to have a hard limit on the total amount of Bitcoin that will ever exist, 21 million. There are currently a little less than 20 million in circulation. The remaining 1 million or so will be mined over the next 116 years. This fixed supply means that as demand increases, Bitcoin's value will increase relative to other assets that do not have a fixed supply, especially government-issued currencies, which have a history of devaluing over time due to inflation. But digital scarcity is a weird concept. What's stopping someone from just saying they have more Bitcoin? Much like the meme of NFTs, where someone would just take a screenshot of an NFT image and claim they have it too. That brings us to what is likely the #1 aspect of Bitcoin's value, the blockchain. How many times have you heard somebody say they don't like crypto, but they like the blockchain? Even though many that parrot this phrase don't know what they're talking about, blockchain is doing a lot of lifting in Bitcoin's value proposition. With Bitcoin came the creation of blockchain technology. A blockchain is quite literally a series or chain of digital blocks where each block contains a list of transactions. This series of chunks of transactions are distributed across many computers on the network. These computers are made up of nodes and miners, each of which keep their own copy of the blockchain. This network of computers is largely considered to be the most powerful computer network in the world, excluding the broader internet as a whole, which itself includes the Bitcoin network. Because of its massive amount of processing power, the ability for somebody to cheat the system is extremely unlikely. Even if it could possibly be done, it likely wouldn't be worth the cost of doing so. Take, for example, what is considered to be one of the biggest vulnerabilities of Bitcoin, a 51% attack. A 51% attack is a theoretical attack on the Bitcoin network wherein a single entity controls over half of the Bitcoin network's processing power, known as the hash rate. In theory, if this were to ever be the case, that entity could produce new blocks faster than the rest of the network, allowing them to do things like double spend coins and reject the confirmation of other transactions. However, the current hash rate of the network is over 800 million terahashes per second. To successfully pull off a 51% attack would require millions of machines costing tens of billions of dollars, plus additional billions in facility costs and another tens of millions of dollars per day in operating costs. Not to mention the labor required to set up and maintain the hardware. All that simply to break a network that's publicly available and constantly monitored. While some money could be made in the short term, once the attack is confirmed, the value is non-existent, and the attacker would have nobody else to sell to, leaving them holding a digital asset that nobody wants anymore. But even if there is no viable profit motive, there are other reasons that somebody might want to attack the Bitcoin network, some of which are political in nature. Money is a powerful tool, and there's a reason virtually every country develops their own currency. Bitcoin, while not perfect for day-to-day transactions, is a very reliable means of peer-to-peer transacting without the need for a third party such as a bank or a credit card company, which would be subject to the political influence of the country in which they operate, be that with good intentions or otherwise. So if a powerful government feels threatened by that concept, it may be inclined to attempt to ban Bitcoin or attempt to attack and possibly disrupt its network. It's likely that these are a few of the reasons that the United States federal government may be starting to look at Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, much like their view of gold. According to the Bitcoin Act of 2024, Section 5A1A, the Secretary of the U.S. Treasury would be ordered to purchase up to 200,000 Bitcoins per year over a 5-year period for a total acquisition of 1 million Bitcoins. And that would be a little less than 5% of the total supply of Bitcoin. And according to Section 5C, titled Minimum Holding Period, the bill requires that the Secretary holds all of that Bitcoin purchased for a minimum of 20 years, with the only exception being able to pay off the federal debt. After the 20-year minimum holding period, the Secretary will make recommendations to Congress on what to do with it. And even then, the Secretary is not allowed to recommend to sell more than 10% of the assets in the strategic reserve within a 2-year period. The intentions in this bill are clear: buy Bitcoin and hold it. But it should be noted that this bill hasn't passed in either chamber, and bills change all the time. So what does this mean for the United States? Is it giving up the dollar for Bitcoin? Absolutely not. Should the United States go full crypto bro in any form, Bitcoin will be treated in a similar way to gold. It will be held as a store of value, not used as a replacement for the dollar. There have been many conversations recently regarding a central bank digital currency, or a CBDC. This is a totally separate conversation from Bitcoin acquisition, and I would argue that much of the pipe dream of a CBDC has already really been implemented. Most of the United States dollar in circulation exists as a number on a screen. Only between 3 and 8% of all United States dollars exist as a physical paper or coin. The primary difference would be the implementation of a blockchain. I think the fear of a CBDC is very much overblown, and many of the fears cited are already possible through the current monetary system. Anyways, I digress. I believe the United States buying Bitcoin is beneficial in the medium to long term, while being slightly negative to neutral in the short term. If the bill is ever passed, the Secretary would essentially implement a dollar cost average strategy in purchasing Bitcoin, as the bill calls for purchases to be made in a manner that causes minimal market disruption in Section 5A1B. That would have the Secretary buying an average of up to 548 Bitcoin per day for 5 years. Even if the price drops during this time period, historically, no amount of Bitcoin has ever been acquired and held for more than 5 years and been worth less than the value it was when it was acquired. Is this a gamble? Probably a little bit, but the United States government being involved in Bitcoin very likely means a further strengthening and trust in the network itself. Which brings me to my next point. How will U.S. allies react? Initially, it may be met with some hesitation, especially if implemented under a controversial president like Trump. But my expectation is that time will show the world that this is a good move. El Salvador got the ball rolling for the West's adoption of Bitcoin, and the United States following that path would, in my opinion, spark a wave of Western nations doing the same. There are 10 countries that have a general ban on Bitcoin, none of which are in NATO. And the only country on the list that is a non-NATO ally of the United States is Saudi Arabia. The remaining countries, such as Pakistan and China, have, at best, a rocky relationship with the United States. So, over time, the United States could show its allies that holding Bitcoin as a strategic reserve is a good strategy. On the other hand, the reaction of adversaries to the United States is not so predictable. While there are infinite outcomes, I see three as being the most probable. 1. Its adversaries recognize that they're falling behind in the adaptation to Bitcoin and begin to shift its strategies to match that of the United States. 2. They ignore this move and continue to operate without adapting to Bitcoin. Or 3. They actively try to destroy or disrupt the Bitcoin network to undermine the United States and its allies that follow its lead. The third option would be the most detrimental for all parties involved, but I believe the first is the most likely to happen. To be fair, it would likely require China make the decision to embrace Bitcoin, but if it seems like that's what's best for the CCP, I believe China would consider such a move. Regardless of the actions of its adversaries, I believe the United States adopting such a Bitcoin policy that would create a strategic reserve of Bitcoin to this magnitude would likely revolutionize money as we know it. At a minimum, the move would likely cause the value of Bitcoin to increase. In the most extreme possibility, Bitcoin becomes the standard of value by which all other assets are judged. I would like to see a world which has an asset with a fixed supply and that's deflationary in theory as the center of all value. A point of reference, if you will. It would create a global standard not influenced by politics, but purely by market forces. And that should be the dream of any person who loves free trade. How likely is this to happen? In my opinion, the chances are smaller than my man Justin Timberlake. Trump has made many promises over the course of his campaign, many of which were an attempt to court a libertarian audience. Whether it's promising to pardon Julian Assange and Ross Ulbricht, who ironically owned most of the Bitcoin that the US government currently possesses, or promising to put libertarians in his cabinet. As we now know, he's calling RFK a libertarian, so it's clear the man is not serious. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the promise to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve was just another empty promise for Trump to obtain the position he so badly craves. I won't be holding my breath for this to happen, but I will continue to hold my Bitcoin and continue to add to my collection whenever I can. To be clear, I am not a financial advisor. Do not take this video as a recommendation to buy Bitcoin. Your financial problems are your own. I have plenty of mine to deal with. Tell me what you think may happen with the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. I'm interested to see what you have to say. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.